Growing up in Waipahu was what I would call the golden age of my youth. It was a special time. My next door neighbor was Mr. Tanaka. He was an elderly Japanese man, obviously came here during the plantation era, but he was tall, straight, and very, very funny. I was into karate during that time, and many instances you could find me in the front yard of my home doing kata and practicing. And Mr. Tanaka would watch enthusiastically and he would clap and he would laugh. He also had this five fingered fruit tree. The fruits he would give to us, and my parents would give him guava and mango. And so he was a really, really good neighbor. One of those times when I was out in the yard practicing, Mr. Tanaka was not home. I happened to glance across to his front window of his house, and there was a little girl standing just inside the window, watching. I looked at her and I waved. She waved back. Then she turned around and disappeared into the house. A short time later, as Mr. Tanaka was again watching and tending to his roses, I walked over to him and I said, "Hi, Mr. Tanaka." He said, "Hello." I said, "Do you have a granddaughter or a daughter that lives in your house? I saw her the other day. Maybe you can tell her to come outside and join us and play in the front yard with my nephews and my friends." Mr. Tanaka was always jovial, always smiled, always very happy, but at that point, a frown came across his face. He put his head down like this, and he said nothing. And he turned around and walked into his house. A short time after that, Mr. Tanaka passed away. It was around the time my Hanai mother came down with a stroke, and eventually we had to move out. One day when I'm in the front yard, a younger local Japanese man comes up to the fence, and he says, "Hello." And I said, "Hi." He says, "I'm Mr. Tanaka's son. You must be Lopaka, the one he talks about who plays karate in the front yard all the time." I said, "Yes." Went over and shook his hand. He said, "I'm here to take care of the affairs of my dad's home, but I just wanted to say hello." And I asked him, I said, "Do you have a sister or maybe like your father had a granddaughter? Because sometimes when I play in the front yard, I see a little girl inside the house and I wave and she waves back, but she never comes outside." Mr. Tanaka's son said, "Oh, that." During the plantation era, when my dad came over with his family, there's a practice that they sort of brought over from Japan. It's called thinning. Thinning? He said it's when there's one too many mouths to feed and not enough food. And so they have to decide who goes. The elder who's sick and near death, or the youngest. In my dad's situation, it was the youngest. Traditionally in Japan, in the corner of a shed or something like that on the property is where the body is buried. And on top of it, they have a circular shaped copper looking anvil on top of the spot. He says, "Come, climb over the fence." I climb over the fence. He takes me to the shed adjacent to Mr. Tanaka's house. He opens the door. We're standing outside. And he points to the right corner, the far corner of the shed. You see, right there, that circular copper looking thing, that's the anvil. Underneath is my sister. It wasn't too long after that that my Hanai mother had her stroke, and we moved. And so it's on days like this when things are quiet and I have time to think that I remember Mr. Tanaka.